What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's review I'm going to be concluding the first wave of Netflix Transformers War for Cybertron Siege and rounding off with the Deluxe class Chromia. Now yes, I know previously in my previous videos I said that I wouldn't be taking a look at Chromia. However, I saw an awesome review of this figure by T-Man and I just had to pick this up. This was definitely leaps and bounds better than I initially thought it was, and it's actually one of my favourite repaints to come out of this brand new Netflix wave. First of all, we'll take a quick look at some of the components in the box. So we of course do get a cardboard piece of Teletran 1. Honestly, I thought that we would be done with building Teletran 1 after this first wave. However, upon putting it together, there are quite a few pieces left to go. So I imagine that we are getting a wave 2 of the Netflix figures. I just hope that there is a slight variation in terms of their releases and that perhaps they release some brand new molds. But here we have the figure herself, and I've got to say that she looks awesome with her brand new Netflix battle damage effect. She is so much more visually appealing and interesting than the original version that we got, which in my opinion was quite cool looking. I've always been a fan of the almost electric blue, or at least the very light blue that they use for the Chromia sculpt. But I've got to say that with the better battle damage effect, she definitely looks far more visually appealing and definitely a lot more interesting of a character. We are in fact able to see here her huge backpack, which by the looks of things is going to be show accurate from some of the trailers that have come out for the Netflix series. So this brand new toy line of Netflix Siege figures are probably going to be the most accurate Transformers figures ever, seeing as the show is actually based upon the toys, which I just think is a genius idea, as basically anything Hasbro create will be deemed show accurate. We can see that while she does have a huge backpack, I do like the silver highlights for the wheels and the darker plastic to make it look slightly weathered and as if though it's actually part of her body and not just excess vehicle kibble. If we turn around to the back, we do have the front windscreen of the vehicle mode, and you can see that these panels here for the side of the vehicle are done in a really nice dark colour scheme, and then you've got the lovely fade of blue on the side as well. I also think that the battle damage that they've done for her torso and chest looks really nice as well. You can see that there are actually some scrapes and scratches in there, which look super cool, with a darker highlight here for this side where it's a lot lighter on this side. It just looks a lot more authentic and realistic, and we've also got that tarnished damaged effect on both of her arms, and the plastic is slightly off-white, and then you can see her knees. They just look as if though they've been running through the fires of Cybertron, and even the shins too have been given a really nice black, silver and blue fade. I just think that the paint applications on Chromia are so much better than I initially thought, and she's definitely a vast improvement in my eyes over the previous version. Speaking of the original version, here we have last year's version of Chromia compared to this year's new Netflix version, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me in saying that the newer version definitely looks vastly more interesting than this previous version. Not to take anything away from this version, this is definitely more of a clean, before she goes into battle type of look, but you can see that they've even added some additional paint applications which they didn't do with some of the other figures in the line, such as Hound. So you can see she has got additional paint apps for the crest, including the black crest section there. One thing I would have liked to have seen is perhaps them actually paint her eyes in a blue colour, or at least cast a blue transparent clear piece of plastic for some light piping. I think that that would have definitely differentiated it from this one in making her eyes look a lot less dead than they actually do. But just giving you a side-by-side perspective, it definitely does to me look like a lot better of a paint scheme. And then even comparing her blasters and grenades, you've got the grenades here and then the grenades on this version. These ones are blue, whereas these ones are done in a darker plastic, and the blaster here is cast in a darker plastic. The actual silencer, or the stock, is done more or less in the same colour. This one was almost an off-white colour with a hint of blue. This one is definitely a lot more white and pale in comparison, and you can see what I was talking about in terms of the white difference. This one here is definitely a lot darker of a white than the more bluish tint that the original version had. So definitely, in my opinion, I think that this version is vastly superior than the original. For a quick size comparison, here are my top 3 Netflix Deluxe figures to come out of the first wave. I think that these 3 here are the best, with Sideswipe and Hound being the last. They're over there, so I'll bring them for a comparison. But yep, these 3 here definitely are the best out of the first wave of Deluxes. I do think that Scrapface is probably the first best, then you go second, and then third to Chromia, and then fourth for Sideswipe, and definitely last for fifth being Hound. I just think Hound is such a waste and is honestly one of the most pointless releases to ever come out of the new Netflix line. But as a whole, definitely a really solid, nice set of repaints. I just think the Hound could have definitely been a lot more interesting. Turning quickly to articulation, Chromia's head is on a ball joint, so it can look all the way up, down side to side ever so slightly, as well as look left to right. It's on an incredibly stiff joint, so there definitely is no evidence of the mold degrading with this one. The arms can rotate forwards and backwards, hinge out to the sides, full 360 at the bicep, 90-degree bend at the elbow. The wrists can in fact hinge forwards and backwards. Something which I noticed on this figure, which I didn't notice on the original release, was that she actually does have a second waist joint. So initially I thought that it was just this one that you use for transformation, but note, there is actually a second one in here that you can use for robot mode. So that's great to see. I'm completely baffled as to why I never noticed it on the original release, but that is super cool. The legs can kick forwards that far, back that far, out to the sides, full rotation at the top of the thigh. The knee articulation is quite limited unless you move some of this kibble out of the way, and then you do definitely get a greater degree of motion. The foot can pivot forwards and backwards, and we also have the ankle rocker joint. So overall for articulation, it's actually quite decent, and as I stated, the tolerances, in my opinion, are actually better than the original version. Now, seeing as her transformation is fairly straightforward, I'll just quickly show it to you now. It's really not one of the more complex figures to come out of this line, so I have no problems whatsoever in just quickly running through it. You can just open up the back piece, align all of this up, just tab these sections in, take the waist now, rotate that around. We can take the head, fold that back in, lift the arms up, bring these sections over, and then just collapse these down. And there you have Chromia fully transformed up into her Cybertronian alt form. Definitely a very stylistic approach to a Cybertronian alt form, and was actually one of my favourite alt forms to come out of the original Siege toy line, so it's great to see it here with a better paint deco. You can see all of the scuffs and scrapes that they've got going on here for the front windscreen. Definitely a lot better of a paint deco than the original Siege battle damage. The Autobot emblem, as well as various different black splotches throughout just to give it that weathered effect. And I absolutely love the muddier, dirtier fades on the base. And then it slowly gets lighter as it bleeds away into the more blue of her base colour. So yeah, definitely a super interesting and super cool looking figure. She does roll really nicely as well, which is pretty decent. And then in terms of her accessories, you can of course take them apart. You have the grenades, which you could have attached to a backpack. And then you can just peg these in to these slots here to give her gas canisters, or perhaps give her some thrusters. So just align that up. Peg the pistol into the top. And then peg the stock into the top as well, or perhaps the scope. And here you've got some weapon storage for Netflix Chromia, so definitely a super cool looking figure. For a quick comparison between the Netflix version and the original version, you can just see that the newer version is leaps and bounds more interesting than the previous version. I'm honestly so surprised with this release. Quite honestly, I was going to skip out on this one completely. I'm so glad that I picked it up, as I just think that this one is so lackluster in comparison. You can see even the addition of actually casting this front windscreen section in a more blue-like plastic than the transparent plastic that we got, which was of course clear on the original, I just think sets it apart from the original so much nicer. Definitely a super cool figure. So yeah, I highly recommend this newest Netflix Chromia. I think that she is, as I stated, the third best in the deluxe assortment. She's definitely up there with Scrapface and Mirage. Of course, they are drastically different from their original counterparts, but I think that she's probably the third most difference out of them all, with of course Sideswipe and Hound being the last two. Hound is just awful. It's such a shame that they didn't take this type of approach with Hound, but a super cool looking figure. So that just about wraps up this review for the Transformers Netflix War for Cybertron Siege Deluxe Class Chromia. I hope that you enjoyed the review, and be sure to let me know down in the comment section below whether or not you're excited for the new Netflix series, which is set to debut next month, and whether or not you enjoyed the review. Thanks for watching.